Mr. Homan, it's good to talk to you. After a very busy day in LA, you had an interagency operation yesterday. Who all was involved in what happened in LA?
Well, we had ICE, both divisions of ICE had ERO, Enforcement and Removal Operations. We had HSI. We had a DEA, U.S. Marshals, ATF, FBI, and the IRS. And we had assistance of the U.S. Attorney here in Los Angeles was with me overseeing the operation.
What did the operation net in terms of arrest?
With the one criminal investigation, we arrested 40, and one person was arrested for interference. So a total of 41 arrests.
One for impeding.
Impeding, yes.
And that individual will likely be charged and probably bonded out and have to deal with the charges.
Yeah, but he will be charged with impeding. So that, again, you have to face that consequence. The U.S. Attorney here in Los Angeles has charged him.
Okay, and when you say that there were problems with the financials of this, is that under the purview of ICE, or is that part of the reason that the FBI and some of these other agencies, IRS, were involved?
Yeah, it's a multi-agency investigation. When we talked about customs fraud, tax evasion, money laundering, many different agencies are part of the task force, Homeland Security Task Force. So, and plus we have the other agencies also helping us in at-large criminal arrests. And the good thing about that, President Trump came up with this ideal of all the government searching and arresting for illegal aliens in this country who are public safety threats and national security threats. What's good about that, when we find a criminal threat, an illegal alien public safety threat or a national security case, if the DEA is with us and we're an illegal alien with a weapon, they can prosecute, like 922G, illegal alien possession of a weapon, which is a felony. So they can prosecute any gun charges that we find. And you got the ATF can prosecute guns, DEA can prosecute any drugs we find. So having these other law enforcement agencies with us gives us a chance to start a criminal prosecution separate from the overarching investigation. Then we have to get done dealing with that criminal prosecution, then we can deport them to the United States.
So one of the first places that you served a warrant, a search warrant on, and you had done some work, the I-9 work, was at a factory.
There's a warehouse where they sell a lot of clothing.
Yeah, a warehouse.
And that's where we arrested over 41. And many of them were hiding, trying not to be arrested by ICE. So it took a while to find them. They're hiding, and their after was hiding in, boxes, but we were able to find them all and take custody of them. And what's important about that is we want to take statements from all these people and make sure, are we going to identify anybody that was in forced labor? Because the garment industry is famous for that. We got to make sure anybody in forced labor, anybody being abused or threatened, not being paid properly. There's a lot of things we look at. Are they a victim of trafficking? Did we find any juveniles? So yesterday, fortunately, we found no kids that were forced into forced labor, but the investigation continues, the interviews are continuing.
All right, and then this particular company also had a storefront, and there was a warrant served there as well, correct?
Correct.
And there was a huge reaction in terms of protesters, and I say huge in terms of the vitriol that was being protested in the streets, particularly outside the retail outlet. Tell us about that.
Well, it takes a while to serve a warrant, right? We got a lot of looking for documents, looking for evidence, talking to people that are being arrested. There's a lot goes into a search warrant. It takes several hours. So then while we're executing that search warrant and going through the process we go through, of course, the community here in LA, the non-government organizations, the open border advocates, they're very well coordinated in Los Angeles through social media. So as soon as the word got out that we had an enforcement action at a specific location, more and more protesters started gathering. And it got to the point where the crowd got big by a couple hundred people, and they were trying to impede our efforts, not only to take the arrested illegal aliens and place them in transportation to get them to the office, they also were trying to prevent our officers from leaving the facility. Surrounding facilities wouldn't let them leave. And we're seeing this more and more throughout the country. It's well organized, they can protest all they want. They have that right. They got the First Amendment rights. But when you get to the point you're threatening, impeding, and preventing us from doing our job, it's a crime. and we're going to have to be forced to take action.
All right, so what are the instructions to the agency if someone is impeding their coming or going from a crime scene, if they're transporting detainees, if somebody's impeding that, if somebody's getting up and putting their hands on a federal officer, what is their instruction if that happens?
Well, yesterday, at the beginning of the operation, I spoke to him. I told him what I expected to happen, and the U.S. Attorney also spoke to the same information we give him, like zero tolerance. Zero tolerance. If someone impedes you, you arrest them. If someone puts hands on you, you arrest them. If someone tries to get between you and an alien you're arresting, you're going to prosecute. You're going to arrest them and prosecute them. So the message was clear, and that's the message we're trying to send now. You can protest, and you can hate. Shame on you. I mean, but you can hate what ICE does and who ICE is. You can protest and throw out all the nasty words you want, but you can't cross that line. I've been saying this for months. And so now that it's getting to the point, it's getting out of control, it's getting to be a significant threat to our officers. And now you got the doxing, you got the threats against officers and their families. We are going to a zero tolerance position. We will not let anybody break the law, impede us, interfere with us, put hands on us. You will be arrested. That's exactly the message going forward to all agents.
This warehouse and retail outlet that you served warrants on, the belief is, and the evidence suggests, that this is a cartel-related business here in the United States, that this money, the $80 million that they are suspected of undervaluing, the double-digit millions in tariffs that they are suspected and will be charged with violations on, income tax evasion. You believe that all of that is benefiting an illegal cartel, a cartel in Mexico or Colombia. Do you know which cartel?
No, it's a larger investigation, and this company is one of many that we're searching and gathering evidence on the fact that much of the money in this industry is laundered to Colombia and Mexico in support of cartel activities. We also got tax evasion, and we also got customs fraud. And you know, ICE, big part of ICE responsibilities are customs laws, customs enforcement. So this is one business out of many we're looking at. So it's a part of a bigger investigation. And as we gather more evidence, then we'll decide what we want to criminally prosecute, you know, specifically for.
Now, in front of the media, including Merit TV, were there, and a flatbed truck pulls up in front of this retail organization where a warrant was being served. There are megaphones, and they're broadcasting out as loud as possible, relentlessly, and they're coaching those that are arrested or might be arrested, telling them what to do, what to not do, et cetera, et cetera. And that's all legal. You have no problem with that, right?
I have no problem with it. If they want to shout, you know, here's your Constitution, they're going to be read the rights anyways, but if they want to shout their rights and to not speak and get a lawyer, I'm perfectly fine with that. I mean, they have that right.
But then they started, I saw demonstrators, we have it on video, as does several of the media outlets here in LA, started attacking vehicles, transport vehicles, vehicles with agents in them, pounding on the windows, throwing bicycles, anything they could find against the cars, impeding their exit and attacking the vehicles. That's not free speech.
No, that's a crime. They've damaged a lot of government property. They slashed tires of the agents who were serving the warrants. This is all government property. Again, you got the right to protest, you got the right, your First Amendment rights, but you don't have the right to destroy government property. These men and women are enforcing the law. They're there with a warrant signed by a judge in a criminal investigation. That is a serious criminal investigation. So yeah, they crossed the line.
Have you checked your home title recently? Many homeowners never have. leaving themselves vulnerable. Scammers can steal your home title, forge your signature, and target your equity. Protect yourself from fraud before it's too late. Secure your title and your financial future today. You won't even know it's happened until it's too late. Ensure you're not a victim. Use promo code PHIL at HometitleLock.com to make sure your title is still in your name. You'll also get a free title history report plus a free 14-day trial of their $1 million triple lock protection. That's 24/7 monitoring of your title, urgent alerts to any change, and if fraud should happen, they'll spend up to $1 million to fix it. Go to HometitleLock.com now. Use promo code PHIL. That's HometitleLock.com, promo code PHIL. Did anybody contact anyone that you know of from the demonstrators, from the protesters, that wanted any actual information about what was going on?
No, they don't want the truth. They don't want to know. You know, they do not want immigration laws enforced. It's a sanctuary city, and the representatives of these NGOs and these open borders groups yesterday, you look at all their statements, not one mention of criminals, not one mention of forced labor, not one mention of tax evasion or customs fraud or money laundering or cartel support. It's all about they don't want immigration laws enforced against anybody. And I really think if they understood and asked those questions, or understood why exactly we're there and doing what we're doing, I think you have less people out there protesting. Wait, okay, this isn't just immigration enforcement. This is a part of a bigger criminal syndicate that ICE is trying to investigate and take down. But those questions aren't asked. It's all about immigration enforcement. They don't want to know the facts, because the facts is going to decrease the support they have in these demonstrations and these riots. Last night, after more and more of these NGOs and open border advocates started yelling and screaming and doing demonstrations, now we got hundreds of people at the federal building breaching a federal building. We had people we arrested in custody in that federal building. We got officers, we got non-enforcement officers there, personnel that were in extreme danger, and it was just it really got out of hand, and it's just going to continue. This is what we're dealing with as we're driving here today. New York City, hundreds of protesters at the Federal Plaza. Luckily NYPD is responding, helping our officers, but this is going across. This is a message coming from the open border advocates. Take it on, fight ICE. We see it every day. You've seen the post. ICE are Nazis, ICE are racist. So these Soros-funded groups, these open border advocates, are well positioned, and through social media they can get a lot of people out there to protest what we do, and we don't mind the protest. I'm going to say it again: we don't mind the protest. You got a right to protest, but they're putting our officers in danger. And last night, not only put our officers in danger, they put our detainees, people we arrested yesterday, they were put in danger. And other employees of that facility were put in danger.
If someone had called you from one of these organizations, and there was a spokesperson that was on the microphone yesterday that I watched on a local outlet here for quite some time, and he was saying, this is terrible abuse from the federal government, this is terrible abuse from ICE, this is genocide. There weren't enough adjectives and superlatives for him to use describing how bad what was going on was in his eyes. And he apparently is on top of an organization that has 60 or 80 advocacy organizations under this umbrella. And he was telling them, look, if you're not a member, then you're not helping. You need to join, because we need to get organized, and we need to push back against ICE. We need to stop them from doing what they're doing. And we need to get these people released that were arrested, that these are just people trying to make a living, and they were just arrested just out of the blue, no warning. And basically saying there was no justification whatsoever for this operation. If that person had contacted you, contacted the federal building and said, I would like to sit down with Tom Homan and find out what's going on in the community so I can share this with the community, would you talk to them? Would you have talked to them?
In a heartbeat. I mean, I spend almost every day talking to the media in groups. As you know, there's networks out there that are not supportive of this administration, not supportive of the work of ICE, and I've never said no to anybody. I mean, I've taken some pretty harsh interviews with non-friendly networks that want to spend the entire 20-minute interview attacking ICE. I've never said no to an interview with anybody, any NGOs, any groups, any network. I speak to everybody because I'll just simply lay out the facts. At the end of that, you may not agree with it. You may say, well, I still don't support it, but I think it's important to get the facts out, and I'll talk to anybody. And even, I work at the White House, and the White House press corps knows that. The White House press knows if there's a difficult interview, we'll give it to Homan. I'm not afraid to talk to anybody because the facts are the facts. And again, at the end of it, they may say, well, we don't care. We don't support your mission, but it's important to get the facts out. I think the more and more the facts get out, the more and more people realize this isn't a racial attack. This isn't racism. This isn't a bunch of Nazis running around the streets of our major cities. These men and women are out enforcing the law. We talked about it yesterday. Congress created these laws and enacted them. And yesterday we were serving warrants signed by the judiciary, a judge, who looked at all the evidence presented to him, which you got to show significant probable cause to get a search warrant to go into somebody's residence or somebody's business to look for evidence. A judge looked at all the facts, says, yes, you got the facts, here's your search warrant, and we're executing those search warrants, looking for evidence for a criminal violation. That's that's a message we keep sending out over and over again, but these advocates, many of these advocates, they don't want to know the facts. This is about taking on the Trump administration, about taking on the men and women at ICE, and the rhetoric, as you know, is increasing every day. So we're out there again today, looking for public safety threats, people who have final orders of removal issued by a judge, and I'm sure you're going to see some more protests today. But I want to make it clear, they can protest all they want. We're not going to stop doing this job. It's going to make it more dangerous. We got to send more resources, make sure we have a plan for securing not only the property but the men and women who are serving those warrants and the men and women we're arresting. So we just got to add more resources, but we're not going to stop enforcing the law. The American people voted for this to happen. President Trump sitting in office because he wanted to secure the border and concentrate on public safety threats and national security threats, and we're going to continue doing that without apology. So it makes it more difficult, makes it a hell of a lot more dangerous, but we're going to keep doing it.
You've heard me talk about Jace Medical. If not, listen up, because they're doing incredible work in medical preparedness, and today I've got two major updates to share. First up, the ivermectin use case. You've probably seen the headlines calling it a wonder drug. The scientist who discovered it even won a Nobel Prize, and now Jace is offering a 30-day supply at the best price you'll find anywhere. Next, the upgraded Jace case, an emergency supply of antibiotics delivered to your door. They've doubled the number of medications to 10 at just $20 more. And now, the most comprehensive and affordable kit available. Get it before you need it. Don't wait, order today. Visit jace.com and use code PHIL at checkout for a special discount. That's JASE.com, code PHIL. Look, I know there were some heartbreaking stories. I mean, they were talking about some of these. There was a father that had been here for 20 years, and he had children here, and all of that. But he was working for a criminal enterprise. Don't know if he was involved in the criminal part of it or not, and not saying that he is. But when he's working for a criminal enterprise that's tied to a cartel, I didn't hear any of them standing up and saying, look, they've served a search warrant on this company, this warehouse over here, because they're suspected of serious financial crimes. I mean, when you were talking about it and I was looking at the documents on it, we're talking about over $100 million of this one company. When you add in the tariffs and the undervaluation and the IRS charges and stuff, it looks to me like he gets up around and over $100 million. That's just what they know or suspect, at least. And none of them said that. When they didn't say, okay, you're all wondering what happened. Let me tell you what happened. You may not like it, you may not agree with it, but here's what happened. A federal judge signed a warrant pursuant to reviewing extensive information and said this is a criminal enterprise, appears to be tied to cartels, and so there are IRS issues here. There's DEA is interested in this, ATF is interested in this, ICE investigated the company and found out there are dozens of illegal immigrants working there. So none of these people that were standing up informing the community were giving them any of the facts or any of the information.
Absolutely not.
They were just fomenting the crowd.
In addition to everything you said, what we also find in these things, which is very important, is many times we do these operations, we'll find victims to trafficking. We'll find people who are working for nothing because they're paying off smuggling fees. You know, we've done operations where these aliens are working for pennies on a dollar, working incredible hours, being forced to live in these facilities against their will, not free to leave, and they're threatened. If you leave, or if you try to leave, if you try to report us for violating labor laws and treating you the way you do it, we'll call ICE on you. So a lot of these people are, when we go to some of these work sites, now this yesterday work site is still doing some investigative interviews and looking at, but many of these work sites, not talking about yesterday, we haven't drilled down the facts yet, but we'll find victims of trafficking. We save them. We talked yesterday about, we ran an operation when I was running the office in Dallas that we're hitting all these massage parlors. Many of these young women were locked inside these facilities at night. All their identifications and passports were locked in a safe. They have no access to them. They're forced into prostitution to pay off smuggling fees for years. So there's a total different aspect. Not only does the worksite enforcement have a criminal investigative aspect, but we find a lot of victims within these work sites. We actually save a lot of people. As I said the other day, some of these factories we go into, we find children. They're not going to school. They're being forced into labor to pay off smuggling fees. And many of these people just can't leave, because if they leave, the cartels threaten their families back in their country. They threaten to call ICE. They'll physically assault them. I've been doing this a long time. And that's what upset me over the last administration, the Biden administration, because they stopped all worksite enforcement. And I said from day one, this is ridiculous, because many victims of trafficking are found and rescued at work sites. So on top of all the criminal stuff we're talking about, there's that aspect too that people need to understand.
Do they not understand it, or are they just not wanting to share that with the crowd? Do they really not know?
I think it's half and half. I think that the protesters and the ones that come out and the real strong anti-immigration advocates, the anti-borders advocates, they don't want to know the truth. But I think the American people, and that's why, thank God, we're talking today, and I'll talk to anybody about this. We need to educate the American people who watch these protests and listen to the hate they spew about ICE being racist and Nazis, and they'll pick the most sensitive case out there about a father or something, and that's what it's all about. So that's why it's important, the work you and I are doing right now, to get the truth out there, so people are just sitting back watching this, just hearing from the advocates. They need to hear from us too, on why we do what we do. It's important.
Karen Bass, mayor of LA, spoke yesterday and was very sympathetic to the community here, the garment district, the community at large, and was saying, hey, we had no idea, we weren't informed, we weren't told this was happening. They just came in here and did all of this, didn't give us a heads up, didn't tell us what's going on, and that creates anxiety and chaos in the city.
When you raid Home Depot and workplaces, when you tear parents and children apart, and when you run armored caravans through our streets, you cause fear and you cause panic. And deploying federalized troops is a dangerous escalation, but we need to be real about this. This is about another agenda. It's not about public safety. There's clearly no plan, and there is clearly no policy. Los Angeles is a city of immigrants where 50% of the population is Latino. A percentage of the populations are from Asian countries and from all over the world. And we embrace all Angelenos. It doesn't matter where you came from or when you got here. But the most important thing right now is that our city be peaceful. And so protests and expressing your fears, your beliefs, is appropriate to do, but it is just not appropriate for there to be violence. And I don't want people to fall into the chaos that I believe is being created by the administration completely unnecessarily.
Are you in a position to inform a mayor of a federal operation like this, particularly when you have a sanctuary city that has declared that they're not going to help or support ICE? Do you put agents' lives in danger if you come in and inform the mayor of what you're getting ready to do? We are in the midst of a brutal allergy season. According to experts, it is longer and more severe than in years past. For many of us, that means sleepless nights, tossing, turning, and sneezing, and the dreaded postnasal drip. That's not even half of it. But there is a solution. Sambrosa night syrups. It's effective. Try it and get your best night's sleep. If you watched my town hall with RFK Jr., then you know Sambrosa is sponsoring Merit TV's Make America Healthy Again campaign. That's because Sambrosa contains no dyes, synthetic colors, or artificial flavors, and no high fructose corn syrup. Just a base of nutrient-rich honey and 7 organic herbs and a small dose of antihistamine that will have you sleeping like a baby. Go to Sambrosa.com and use code MERIT for 25% off your first order. Wake up rested and invigorated. Again, go to Sambrosa.com and use code MERIT for 25% off your first order.
So absolutely. These surprise operations, it's about officer safety, it's about community safety. Especially, as you said, in sanctuary cities, the word gets out, they're waiting for us. A lot of people are looking for are bad people. The element of surprise keeps the officer safe. It keeps the ambulance safe. Because we know that if the word gets out, the worst of the worst is going to be waiting for us. And many of them will continue to hide or run, but some won't. Some are going to be laying in wait, and terrible things will happen. We talked about this yesterday when we were driving around looking at the operations. I'm telling you right now, it's a matter of time before one of our law enforcement officers take a life, or these radicals kill an officer. It's coming. It scares the hell out of me. But as this rhetoric continues, and not only from Open Borders advocates, members of Congress, Hakeem Jeffries, who says he's going to dox every ICE agent out here.
You've spoken about what you term as overly aggressive tactics by ICE agents here. Are you concerned, though, that possibly demasking some of these agents puts their safety or their family's safety in jeopardy? And why not?
Seems to me that the officials at the Department of Homeland Security, including ICE, should be held to the same standards as every other part of law enforcement in terms of transparency.
How dare we wear masks? Wear a mask to protect their identities, their family identities, because they're being doxxed and they're being threatened, their families are being threatened, so they're trying to give themselves some sort of protection. And you got a member of Congress that says he's going to identify every ICE agent out there as wearing a mask. We got agents being threatened, families being threatened. You and I talked about it yesterday. I had over 1,000 protesters in my home. Again, as the borders are, I can deal with that. But the men and women out there doing these dangerous jobs, their families are scared. They're concerned about their safety and their families. It's already a dangerous job. So as this rhetoric continues to increase, and the attacks on ICE continuing to increase, when they hear it from some judges, members of Congress, then people in the public, okay, it's okay to attack ICE. I got a member of Congress talking about it, I got a judge saying something about it, so they feel supported in the continued attacks of ICE. My biggest fear, and last night when I went to bed last night, I actually prayed that the officers last night who were stuck in that building and being threatened by hundreds of people would get home safe. I also prayed that illegal aliens that are in their custody would remain safe. This doesn't have to be inhumane, and we're trying not to be inhumane. You saw yesterday how the people that are in custody at the processing center were treated. They were treated with dignity. Even I sat next to a young man that was crying, trying to figure out, what was going on with him, and tried to settle him down, saying, you're in a safe place.
We were in this processing area, and these individuals being processed are sitting on benches there, and there was a young man, and I saw him over there, and he was kind of shaking and crying, and you walked around long areas, went over benches and everything, and got up to him and introduced yourself and sat down next to him. What country is he from?
From Guatemala.
And I watched you talking to him, and it looked like a father talking to their son. I mean, you had your arm around his shoulders. What were you saying to him?
He was scared, and he was crying. And we talked. Where are you from? When did you come? Where are you working? And I asked him, "You scared?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Nothing to be scared about. We're going to take care of you. You're in a safe place." He asked me if I was hungry. He said, "Yes." So when I left, I told one of the officers, let's get this guy something to eat. So it was about, this doesn't have to be inhumane. And we're pushing real hard not to be inhumane. We got to enforce the law, but it can be done in a humane manner. So, I get it. This young man may be there trying to get a better life. I get it. I understand it. But he's here in violation of law. He's part of a bigger operation. So again, law enforcement, I started as a cop, I was a Border Patrol agent, and I said yesterday, even the Border Patrol, throughout my career, and even after I spent many last few years on the border, just down there when I was retired and working for a news network, see these Border Patrol agents giving their lunches to illegal aliens. I see ICE officers feeding these people out of their own pockets sometimes. So the men and women are ICE. This is what you and I talked about, and I know you're working on a series about this. Men and women of ICE, they're mothers and fathers too. They have children. They don't hang their heart on a hook when they go to work. Either does Tom Homan. Now, I'm pretty harsh stance. I'm going to enforce the law without apology, but it doesn't mean you have to be inhumane. Doesn't mean you don't have a heart for these people sometimes, depending who they are. I certainly don't have a heart for a little and that rapes a child, but there's a right way and wrong way to do this job. We're trying to do it the right way.
Well, he seemed to be afraid, as some of them were, that once they were in custody, they were going to be abused. And I think that's rhetoric that's being spewed out there. If they get a hold of you, boy, they're going to treat you horribly.
They're going to send you to an ICE facility that's the most terrible place in the world. They're going to send you to a concentration camp. And as you and I talked about, the ICE standards, detention standards, are the highest in the industry. I'll put an ICE detention standard up against any other federal detention facility, any state prison, any county jail. And I stand by that. I'll put our detention standards and our facilities up against anybody. So I was simply trying to calm the young man down and let him know things are going to be all right.
Now, those people that we saw being processed when I was in there looking, they were being treated absolutely with dignity and respect. Nobody was being harsh with them at all. It was really them that determined to a great extent how they were treated. If they were cooperative and conducted themselves in a reasonable fashion. I saw everybody involved bending over backwards to take care of them and make sure they had what they needed. And with someone like this, I also saw men and women being put onto a shuttle, and it had a divider down the middle where there were men on one side and women on the other side. What is the reason?
We don't want women sitting next to unrelated male adults. Same thing with children. You know, when we have a child through a smuggling operation, we find children, unaccompanied children, we hold them in a different facility, far away from any unrelated adults. It's about safety of the alien.
And you have a unit where families go. If a family is detained, you keep that family intact and send them to a particular location where they stay together.
They go to a family residential center. A family residential center is a facility built for families. These facilities have child psychologists, they have family counseling, they have attorney access. They even have education programs. It's not a jail with concertina wire and armed guards. It's a facility built specifically for families, purpose for families.
You said there are even exercise classes for the women there.
Yeah, I went down there to one facility a few years ago, and they had Zumba classes for the moms, while the children in education had activities for the mothers. I mean, again, treating with dignity. They're in violation of law. We're going to enforce law. If they get order removed, we're going to remove them. But again, we try to give them the care and feeding they need while they're in our custody.
What our crew were reporting on the street is a lot of fear mongering. Like, if these ICE monsters get their hands on you, you're immediately going into some hellish dungeon type situation. That isn't what I saw at all. Nobody wants to get arrested. I get it. They're here wanting a better life. I get it. But deal with the facts, because if they get arrested and detained, nobody is abusive. Nobody is harsh with them. This isn't like some prison with abusive guards. That is not at all what I saw. These men and women were treated in a polite fashion. They were, when I say dignity and respect, they were spoken to in a civil way. They were asked questions. They got answers to their questions. And you say at some point, if they get an order to remove, they will be flown back to, like, Guatemala, for example, at government expense. And when they land, they're given $1,000 to help them get on their feet back in their home country, correct?
Right. We're really pushing the CBP Home app to have illegal aliens who want to leave and should leave work with us. That gives you a chance to get your affairs in order, make arrangements, get you on a plane, send you home, give you some money. And what we're trying to educate them is if we have to go through the whole process of going through court proceedings, get order removal, have to find you and enforce that order removal, then you are automatically given statutory bars of reentry. So you can't come back for a guest visa or a worker's visa or a tourist visa, or and a lot of these people will have a U.S. citizen child that will turn 21 and can petition for a family member in the future. So we're saying go on your own, work with ICE, let's get your arrangements in order, and go home. We'll help you give some cash when you get there, and leave yourself the opportunity to come back under a different legal program, whether it's a visitor visa, a tourist visa, a work visa, or something, apply for a green card, whatever. But we have to be forced to go through the enforcement procedure. You have a statutory bar anywhere from 5 years to 20 years, sometimes forever, or ever coming back, having the opportunity to come back. That's why we're trying to push. It's the most humane way to do it. Work with us and let's do it.
If somebody yesterday was treated unfairly, would it be the ICE agents or the people that were being detained? Who was treated unfairly yesterday?
It's men and women law enforcement. The ICE agents, the FBI agents, the U.S. Marshals, they're already in harm's way of enforcing the law. That's why they carry a badge and a gun. That's why they wear Kevlar vests. You saw them all yesterday. With all the gear they need to enforce the law and protect themselves. But on top of all that, what happened yesterday puts them in extreme danger. So I know for a fact last night at one point, the protesters vastly outnumbered the men and women inside that building. It causes chaos. It causes a very dangerous situation, not just for the agents, but for the people outside and the people they have in custody. So it's again, it worries me that this rhetoric will continue to escalate. It's going to turn out not good for somebody.
Well, one of our cameramen that was down there last night listening to those that were in the crowd, he said it was interesting that there was a mix in the crowd outside the federal building when everything moved over to the detention center area where they breached the building at the parking entrance for a time, that it was described as like a party out there, that there were a lot of people that they didn't seem to really get the gravity of what was going on, that they were just drinking and partying and playing music and laughing and just out on the street, like this is a great excuse to get out on the street and have a good time. And then there were people that were there organizing other people, and they were overheard say, "You think this is something today? We had no time to organize because we were surprised. Wait till tomorrow, because tomorrow we're going to really be organized. We're going to really put on a united front. We're going to really push back, and these people are going to be released."
Well, that's not going to happen.
Well, that's not going to happen, is it?
No.
But they're saying that with 24 hours or more a day to organize, that they're going to really get aggressive and come prepared today.
Well, we'll be prepared to. We're going to enforce law without apology, and we're not going to be bullying, not enforcing the law. You know, when I talked about the over 1,000 protesters at my house, I was contacted saying, if you release these people, there'll be no protests. Did they get released? No, they had their protest. We're going to enforce the law. So if they want to continue increasing the rhetoric, we're going to continue increasing our response. So we're aware of the threats for today, and we're well prepared for that. Again, protest all you want, you have that right. If you cross the line, there's zero tolerance, zero. I want to make a message clear for all the future protesters. Have fun with your protests. When you cross that line, you'll be held accountable. You will be criminally prosecuted. I work with the highest levels of DOJ. Every week we're in meetings. God, the highest levels of DOJ are promising prosecutions across the board on anybody that violates the law. If you impede us, if you put hands on them, if you knowingly harbor or conceal an illegal alien, you're going to be prosecuted. You cross the line, there's zero tolerance. And I just want to get that message out there. So if you want to come protest, protest. But when you breach a building and you prevent ICE from doing their job, like yesterday, you try to stop a transport van from leaving where the operation occurred, that we have prisoners in that van, and you're going to try to stop us from doing that job, you are going to be arrested.
Because they were slashing tires on government
You'll be
vehicles.
arrested for damaging government property.
Okay, what is it? Let me ask you, and because I haven't had anybody tell me this straight up. The advocates and those that are anti-ICE, which...
You know, where are the advocates when 500,000 children were smuggled in this country? Where are the advocates when the last administration lost track of 300,000 children? Where are the advocates with a significant increase in sex trafficking of women and children under the last administration because of the open borders? Where are the advocates for 250,000 Americans dying from fentanyl because of the open border? Where are the advocates then? Where are the advocates for the hundreds of angel moms and dads I met that were separated from their children because they buried their children, because their children were killed by an illegal alien? Where are the advocates then? I mean, they're really about humanity and the safety and well-being of migrants. Where were they? Where over 4,000 aliens died making the journey under the Biden administration? An historic high number of aliens died making that journey. Where are the advocates at? The advocates pick and choose. So this isn't about humanity, it isn't about protection. If you really care about the protection of illegal aliens or migrants coming to this country, where were they when 4,000 died making this journey?
Well, I would add to that, where are the advocates for those that are being enslaved in the United States right now because of the exploitation of the cartels holding their families under scrutiny and threatening them, intimidating them with torture or death if they don't do their criminal activity here in the United States? Where are they advocating for them to be found rescued, and gotten out from under the thumb of the cartel. Where are they for that?
Nowhere's to be found. Where are they when the 300,000 missing children, we already found nearly 9,000 of them? Where's the thank you to ICE? Where's the thank you for ICE for taking 29 members of TDA off the streets of New York City 2 weeks ago? Where's the thanks for ICE for all the public safety threats they've taken off the streets? In Massachusetts, over a dozen illegal aliens who raped children. The men and women at ICE are doing a fantastic job. And as you and I discussed many times, immigration enforcement has always been controversial. It's always been emotional. I get it. But we really are doing the best we can to make this country safe again, and we continue. Okay, yesterday was a criminal investigation, have to do with money laundering, tax evasion, customs fraud, get that. But the majority of our time is spent arresting public safety threats and national security threats. But as I said many times, if you're in the country illegally, you're not okay. Either you can leave it on your own, or eventually we'll find you. We're going to enforce the law. Entering the country illegally is a crime. And especially when you spend billions of dollars in due process. A federal judge said you must leave, and you don't leave, you become a fugitive. Unless we find these people and remove them, then what message do we send to the whole world?
Well, that's my question. And maybe I'm sure there will be a lot of comments in the comment sections on this, but what is it the advocates are saying they want? Do they want the U.S. Marshals to quit marshaling? Do they want the ICE agents to just stay home and watch cartoons all day? What DEA, everybody that was involved in this interagency action yesterday, do they want those people to just draw their pay and stay home and let this turn into the wild, wild west again? Because they're enforcing money laundering, ATF on trafficking of arms, human trafficking. All of these agencies, you're all coming together to control this criminal activity. And I guess I'm saying, I'm curious, what is the alternative? What is it they're asking you to do? What do you think they're asking you to do or stop doing? Do they want to just go through and pick which laws they want you to enforce and not the others? And isn't that why we have elections and legislation? I mean, if they don't like the law, change it.
I agree with you. I think some advocates don't want immigration law enforced at all. Some want to just concentrate on the criminals. But we do prioritize criminals. But here's what people need to understand. You and I talked about this. If there's no consequences for violating our laws, if you want to make a claim and you lose that claim, you don't leave, and we don't execute that order by a federal judge, we send a message to the whole world. You can cross the border legally. It's a crime, but don't worry about it. We'll give you due process at great taxpayer expense, and a federal judge says you must leave, and you become a fugitive, but no one's looking for it because you don't think the immigration law should be enforced. You're never going to fix the problem. People are going to keep coming to the United States. Aliens are going to continue to be assaulted by the members of cartels. Women and children will be sexually assaulted. Aliens will continue to die at record pace. When the Border Patrol gets overwhelmed, that's when the fentanyl comes across, kill Americans. They got to understand, if there isn't consequence for breaking the laws, the amount of death and abuse will continue on that border. I started in 1984. People need to understand, if you don't have consequences, the cartels will take advantage. They'll overwhelm the border on purpose with humans so they can get their illicit products across the border because the border is overwhelmed. We have to secure the border, which we've done right now. Now's the time to show consequences. So, and again, if you're vulnerable and you are escaping fear and persecution, there's a method and process to do that. But we got to enforce the laws of this country. We're a nation of laws. And I'll say it again. Here's what they all forget, all these NGOs. There are millions of people standing in line today, taking their tests, doing their background investigation, paying their fees to be a part of the greatest nation on earth. And they're sitting in the back seat while millions of people cheated the system. If you're an illegal alien in this country, like maybe that young man yesterday, wasn't part of the criminal investigation, it was part of a different thing. He's illegal in the United States. He's going to go home. He's been ordered deported. He's going to go home. What are our options? Not to execute that order of removal? Because if we do, you might as well shut down the immigration court. Might as well just shut down the entire process now, because there's no consequences. As sad as unfortunate it is, he violated law, he entered country legal, was a crime, and a judge, after a lot of taxpayer money spent on the process, said you must go home. You gotta go home. Now, Congress needs to fix the system, I give it to them. But in the meantime, we just don't ignore the law, because when we ignore the law, that's what happened the last 4 years. We just talked about the fentanyl, the sex trafficking, the abuse, all continues.
If they change the law, you'll change what you enforce.
They enforce the laws enacted by Congress. So whatever law they enforce, look, I worked for 6 different presidents. I worked for Democratic presidents. I didn't agree with a lot of what they were doing. Well, we enforce the laws. We enforce the policy of the administration. We operate within the framework provided us. Every administration is different. You know, when I was the number 3 in command under Obama, I worked within the framework provided by that administration. Here's the policy of this administration. Here's what you're going to do. You don't have to like it, but you know, under President Trump, you know, I came back second time from retirement because I truly believe this, border security equals national security. A secure border saves lives. Based on what I've done for over 40 years, I guarantee you a secure border saves lives. But you can't have a secure border if you don't have strong interior enforcement. For those who violated the system, got in, we got to show consequences. And showing consequences shows the whole world you can come to the greatest nation on earth, but there's a right way and wrong way to do it. And if you can't get in the right way, and if you're escaping fear and persecution from your homeland, there's a way to get here. We're the most giving nation in the world. You look at every nation in this world, we welcome more refugees in this nation by far, not even close, than every nation in the world.
So if they were all of a sudden to vote for amnesty, anybody that's been here 10 years or more, you might think it insane, but if they passed that law, then you would stop arresting, detaining, and deporting anybody that had been here over 10 years. Whatever the law is, you're going to enforce it.
Yeah, we have to enforce the laws that are enacted by Congress.
I'm not saying you would agree with it, and you've not agreed with everything before, but you enforce the laws as they're written. So why are they not demonstrating with Congress instead of ICE? You're not making the law. They don't say, Mr. Homan, here's a badge, decide which laws you want to enforce. And by the way, get all your guys around and tell them just a case-by-case basis, make the call on the street, whatever feels right to you that day. Do what you want. That's not the deal. The deal is the law, and you enforce the law. So if they don't like that, why are they down protesting in front of a multi-agency criminal operation instead of on Capitol Hill protesting with the legislators saying change the immigration laws?
Well,
you didn't make the laws.
and there's plenty of videos out there of me testifying in front of Congress where I said exactly that. When the Democrats attack us and say, you know, this or that on board, I say, look, if you want to know why the border's broken, you want to know why we have this many people in custody, you want to know why we're being overwhelmed, look in the mirror. Because this can be fixed if you do your job. I've testified at least a dozen times on that very issue. I tell the members of Congress, we want to place blame, look in the mirror, because you can fix this. You can change 3 laws today and solve 85% of the problem on the border. But in the meantime, people, you know, I think a lot of what's happening right now is really anti-President Trump rhetoric. It's about President Trump and this administration. It isn't about common sense. They're putting politics over public safety. They're putting politics over common sense. Even members of Congress, when they make the statements they make about men and women of ICE, really? You're going to attack the men and women of law enforcement. Now, they're the bad guys, but the ones who broke all the victims, is that really the stance you take? Or is it just politics, it's just words to get a political message out?
Well, you're the border czar, and you can't interpret the law, you just have to enforce it. And I've heard you multiple times, including in LA on Friday, stand in front with the U.S. Attorney, stand in front of that group and say, number one, enforce the law, 0 tolerance. stay safe, keep everybody safe. The immigrants, the agents, let's get everybody home safe tonight. I think it was the last thing you said, is let's get everybody home safe tonight. Not just the agents, but the immigrants. Let's get everybody home safe tonight. Safety, safety, safety. But enforce the law. And don't let anybody abuse or impede what you're doing. Enforce the law. So you don't have the right to go in there and say, hey, some of this is kind of rigid, so, let's kind of pick and choose. We'll just make it up as we go along. You can't do that, and you're the border czar. So my question to you is, when you've got Jane and John, ICE agent, out here, they have less than zero opportunity to interpret the law. They can only enforce the law. Why are people targeting them? They have zero latitude in what they do. If they don't enforce the law, they're in violation of oath that they've taken, just as you did to support and enforce the Constitution of the United States. You took an oath when you took office. These people that wear these badges and carry these guns, they have zero right to interpret the law. Why are people on them? Why are people hating on them and spitting on them, yelling at them, giving them hell? They have zero latitude here.
They're upset. They'll attack men and women ICE because they're executing the law under the Trump administration. And I'll say this, I mean it. Under the Biden administration, ICE agents weren't able to execute the law because their policy, their framework was, you're only going to enforce this part. Not this. Now President Trump's in power, says, no, we're going to enforce the laws enacted by Congress the way you were supposed to. So it's a hate placed on ICE because they're the one executing the agenda. But they need to understand, not only are they executing the Trump agenda, they're executing the laws that were written on the books that they weren't allowed to enforce the last 4 years. So it's been a complete 180 on the men and women of ICE. Record number of retirements, record number of people quitting right in the middle of their career, forgetting the retirement benefits, because many of them were upset that they took an oath to enforce the law. They were trained to enforce the law. Then they get out and they say, you only enforce this. That's what I said before. We worked within the framework of that administration. But now, President Trump says, no, we're going to enforce the law. So men and women of ICE are easy targets because they're executing the laws that many people just don't like, or many people just don't think should be enforced. But I think the biggest problem is they hate the Trump administration, which I don't understand why. Because I guarantee, I've worked for 6 presidents, no one has done it better than President Trump. We got the most secure border in the history of this nation today because of President Trump, which means less fentanyl. Fentanyl seizures are down over half. Look at the thousands of lives being saved. Sex trafficking is lower than it has been in a decade. No suspected terrorists, people on the watch list. Have you heard about any being arrested on the southern border? Joe Biden had over 400 we arrested. We had over 2 million gotaways. We averaged 1,800 gotaways a day under Biden. And the gotaway the other day, 26. 1,800 to 26. And people just understand that is national security at its finest. So look at the facts. If you actually look at the facts, you got to support what this administration has done for the safety and security of the United States. And a big part of that is what the men and women at ICE do every day across this country.
I've known Karen Bass for, I don't know, it seems 15, 20 years. And she is a decent human being and a very pleasant person to talk to. I think that she has the capacity to understand, but should she be addressing this community and saying, don't be hating on the moms and dads that are ICE agents. You need to be organizing and activating at a congressional level if you don't like what's happening. Would she serve the community better with that message than saying, well, they're just coming in and creating chaos? I think it's terrible.
Of course she would. I mean, she's the mayor of the city. And I would think her number one responsibility as mayor in Los Angeles is the safety and security of her communities. We're taking bad people off the street. Why don't you support that?
Well, she spent a lot of time in Congress. She was head of the Black Caucus. She was member of Congress for I don't know how many years, but a good while. So she knows how that system works. She knows if you don't like the law, you need to and can change it. If she was giving that message today, saying, okay, everybody calm down. These men and women over here, these are moms and dads. This just happens to be their job. They're enforcing the law. And if you get mugged, you don't want a police officer saying, yeah, we're not really that big on mugging, so we're not going to enforce that. We're not going to protect you. We're not going to try to find that criminal and take them off the street. People would be outraged.
Look, again, it's politics over common sense. They do not want to give Trump administration a win. They don't want to admit that we're fixing what they broke. I mean, even some honest people, I watched a lot of networks, even some honest Democrats, when they get interviewed, what happened? How come you lost? And every one of them say, immigration was a big part of it. So rather than learning the lesson that national security and border security is important, President Trump has turned it around, did a complete 180, most secure border in a lifetime. They can't give him a thumbs up for that. They're not going to give him a win for that. So they're picking politics over public safety. There's no other explanation. I mean, I'm not a stupid man. I wake up every day. Why the hell would you not support taking public safety threats off the street? It's got to be politics. There's no other reason a common sense person doesn't want the laws of this country enforced.
It comes down to simple common sense. We have arrested an illegal immigrant who is a pedophile. Now, I know that child molesters and pedophiles, and those aren't the same thing. There's a range there between what's a pedophile and what's a child molester. A pedophile is a child molester. A child molester is not necessarily a pedophile. These are definitions we don't need to worry about at this point. They're bad actors with children, and they tend to have multiple victims across the years. If you take someone off the street and they've arrested them, that's how they wound up getting in jail and then bonded out. And then if they don't show up and they spend another 10 or 12 years on the street, they could have 10 more victims, 20 more victims, 40 more victims. Does it make sense that they really want you to turn that person loose?
No, it doesn't make sense. And let me give you an example, exactly what you just said. There's a case in Massachusetts. An illegal alien raped a child, sexually assaulted a child. Didn't honor a retainer, they released him after he did his time. It took us 2 years to find him. It took us 25 months to find him. What did he do in 25 months? Were there other victims? You and I both know the recidivism rate amongst these people is really high. Well, who supports that? He's in the country illegally. He raped a child. Why wouldn't every single person in this country say, you know what, he doesn't belong here? He's in the country illegally, that's one that needs to go. We can all agree that he needs to go. Well, we got people, again, who won't honor the ICE detainer and release them to the street. Is it principle? Is it politics? I can't figure it out. But again, we're taking it on. That's why we sent additional resources then to flood the zone to address some serious criminal violations, criminal investigations. And that's why in sanctuary cities, we flood the zone, have these increased operations at a certain time period, so less of these people are walking the streets of the community. LA is a big city. The ICE officers here are understaffed. Compared to the illegal, we got over 20 million illegal aliens in this country. ICE is outnumbered vastly. And I think that's a genius idea of the president to bring all of federal law enforcement in this to look at these public safety threats, national security threats. But people want to know why was there a huge operation? We flooded the zone yesterday because we're outnumbered, and we sent a lot of officers for officer safety reasons and try to arrest the bad guys as quick as possible and do the operation as quick as possible. The more resources you have doing it, the more efficient that process is.
You're coming back to LA
Absolutely.
because there are continuing to be threats to public safety in LA County.
We'll come back to LA, we'll flood the zone.
One of the focuses that you have going forward is what I think is going to prove to be one of the biggest rescue operations in the history of this country. You're setting out to rescue as many of these missing children as can possibly be found. And at this point, the number is probably underreported, but a pretty good estimate is 300,000 children that have just fallen through the cracks. They've just come across the border and nobody knows where they've gone. A lot of the Border Patrol people have told me that a disturbing number have been shipped off to the same addresses in big cities, which just doesn't make sense unless that's a clearinghouse to put them into forced labor or prostitution or whatever. Some of them have probably found their way to family that's here. There's no question about that. Doesn't mean that they're here legally, but not all of them are in horrible situations of forced labor or forced prostitution. But it would be naive to assume that a fair number of them are not in a hellish existence right now.
Yeah, we found, like I say, we're around 8,000, I think, now, and many of them were safe with family.
Yeah.
Some weren't. And you're exactly right. We get a report every week on how many kids we're finding, and a lot of reports come back and say, well, we checked the address. It's a park. We checked the address. It's a gas station. And that, again, a failure of the last administration not properly vetting these sponsors and the information given to them. So we're looking for them. But when the information you get from this case is a sponsor, here's this address, let's go find the sponsor and the child, and you pull up and it's a park or it's a Home Depot, right? Say, well, here we go. Now, how do we find them? And that's the hard part. We talked about this before. The hardest part is finding somebody that don't want to be found. So since a child don't have a digital footprint, they don't have credit cards to pay bills or have driver's license or any of that stuff, we've got to count on a digital footprint of the sponsors. And the sponsors are giving false information, giving false ID, giving false addresses. It's a hell of a challenge, but we're out there every day looking for it.
And when you find those children, they're going to be given resources, medical help, psychological help, trauma help. They're going to be given all kinds of resources to help get them back to some measure of humanity with an eye towards getting them back to their family, reunited with their family.
Our whole 6 months pregnant, being trafficked by two men. So she's going to need care, right?
How important is it to you to find these children, Tom?
It's very important. As a father, yeah. You lay awake sleeping at night, and every week we get the numbers, and I get depressed when the numbers are higher. But again, it's a difficult job. And I think any rational human being would want to find every one of these kids. Every one of them. And if they're with family, okay, we'll do the immigration consequences later, but let's make sure, let's save the ones who are in trouble. Let's save the ones who are living with a pedophile and living a life of hell, or children that sold into sex slavery. Very important to me. This is, as a father, as a human being, as a law enforcement officer who's seen terrible things in my career, I love kids. So yeah, it's important we find every single.
Hey, Dr. Phil here. My network, Merit TV, has it all.
Now, let me blow your mind.
Merit TV's got the news that matters.
The selection of a new pope.
Entertainment you crave.
Busted.
Everybody in a good mood today?
And live events.
Surprise.
What am I, chopped liver?
With serious punch.
Big shot.
Go to merittv.com and download the Merit TV app today.